Do you hear that? Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome on in to another podcast by George. I hope you heard that kind of a name your tune opening there. That's something that is all about what we're going to be talking about today. That's a little bit of Ohio, kind of a different twist on it, performed acoustically by our great friend, our musical maestro that's on podcast by George once in a while, the great Bob Pace. He's in the Iowa Blues Hall of Fame. He's also in the Iowa Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he's old enough to go back to the date that we're talking about. He knows all about this. He plays that song a lot live in person and kind of the original rock version, all electric. You ever get a chance to catch it, do so. Because, folks, today we're going to be talking about May 4th, 1970. This is the anniversary of the Kent State Massacre. And I always refer to May 4th as the American Rosetta Stone because you can't know where we're at. You can't know where we're going if you're not in touch with that date. It's all important in American history. I mean, we're getting all kinds of information now from our government. We're on the brink of a world war, and you need to be able to analyze. You need to be able to sift through the censorship, the propaganda, and everything else that's coming out to make an informed decision and use this in your consideration set. May 4th, 1970. And to talk with us today about that is Laurel Krause. Now, Laurel Krause has been on the show before. She's an advocate for Kent State, and there's a reason for that, the Kent State truth, and for the protection of protesters in America today. She's also dedicated to safe, renewable energy and combating climate crises. I mean, she's right in line with me, the big three on podcast by George: climate, war, and healthcare. Well, since 2007, Laurel has written on these topics on her blog, Mendo Coast Current. She makes her home at the Allison Center for Peace on the Mendocino coast of Northern California. And I encourage you to seek out Laurel Krause on Facebook and follow along and just check out where she lives and what she's all about. It is one of the best things on Facebook. I got to tell you, folks, I'm so glad that I found her. I mean, I love dogs and I love cats, but I don't, and she's got a new dog, by the way, but I don't need any more cat pictures. I need stuff like what Laurel is sharing on Facebook. Now, before spearheading the effort for her sister, Allison Krause, Laurel worked in sales and marketing at technology startups in the early days of Silicon Valley. So let's bring her on in without further ado. I want to take this off the screen and get her on screen here because there she is. Laurel, thanks for coming on in again on this very special date, and it couldn't be any more special to anyone in the world than you. It's a sad day, but I'm sure you'll agree. As I started out saying, it's an extremely important day as far as America is concerned. May 4th, 1970, and I've got a little slideshow that I'm going to go through here to give people the background on this. But maybe before we even get going, let's talk topical here for a second. Laurel, what do you make? Do you agree with me when I talk about having a very critical eye, if not a jaundiced eye, towards what we're being told about a potential world war surrounding Ukraine based on your experience with dealing with the government and, of course, your horrific experience with May 4th, 1970?
Well, what I've learned is they never tell us the truth of what's really going on the ground anywhere related to war, and we're fed a lot of stories about it that boost the regime, the United States. Whatever we're doing, it's all pretty stories and kind stories and important stories about how we have to go fight these wars and how we're right. And we never get any kind of other narratives. And now with the new person that they're hiring, which is like the managing the disinformation thing,
Yes.
they're going for one voice about everything. And that's always what we get in propaganda war.
You know, people ask me all the time, how do you sift
War
through this? How do you
propaganda.
make a decision? Yeah. I tell people, for instance, look at the person that's heading up this new bureau. This, they call it the Ministry of Truth. It's got some disinformation title. I can't even tell you what it is. This person, I mean, these are dubious credentials, folks. Well, that's great. I'm just shocked and appalled. Here we have the circumstance again. We're on the brink of world war in Ukraine, and they send Nancy Pelosi over there with whom you're well acquainted because she's out of your home state to kind of stumble around and bang the war drum. Biden won't go over there. They'll go over and talk to the NATO friends that they have. But the Pope came out and said, hey, I'll go talk to Putin. I'll talk to Zelensky. I'll negotiate this peace settlement. I mean, that's what we elected Biden to do. I mean, that's what he's supposedly good at, is foreign affairs, and he's supposed to be able to cut a deal. We need to get him over there, not the Pope probably, but get Biden over there. And I'm telling everybody that'll listen to me, if Biden were to do that, Laurel, if he were to go over there and cut a deal with these guys that would get a ceasefire that would end this bloodshed in Ukraine, he could accomplish his ultimate goals in the world, I think, which are basically—
They could have done this before any gunfire.
Yes, that's exactly right. And if he did it now, he could win the Nobel Peace Prize and keep the Democrats in power. But he's not going to do it because I think they want to get that soft underbelly, as Matthew Ho says on my podcast, of the Soviet Union through Ukraine. Okay, I could rattle on forever about the topical news of the day. We're going to go back in history here a little bit. I'm going to bring this up on screen and talk through this. And now, Laurel, you can jump in here anytime because, you know, I like the History Channel sometimes, but you're more of an expert on this than anybody is. Now, this reads that on May 4th, 1970, members of the Ohio National Guard, trying to disperse a crowd of student demonstrators at Kent State University, opened fire, killing 4 students and wounding 9 others. And there's one of the most horrific photos from that very tragic day. That's a victim on the ground, folks. That's a college student. That's somebody that was alive a split second before this photo was taken.
That's Jeffrey Miller.
That's Jeffrey Miller. Okay, Laurel. More than any other single event, the Kent State shootings would become a focal point of the ongoing bitter divisions among Americans over the Vietnam War. The deadly outburst marked the culmination of several days of confrontations between law enforcement and protesters, which had begun after Richard M. Nixon announced in a TV broadcast that he had authorized U.S. troops to invade Cambodia, again, which was illegal, was not supposed to have been done. These college students flipped their shit, and rightfully so. I mean, we were hoping at this point for a drawdown to an end of this war. And then here comes Nixon saying, no, we're not going to draw down. We're going to expand. And it, again, has a chilling alignment with what is happening today. There are people that are calling for us to do this expansion in Ukraine as well. So let me go to the next slide here. Okay, this is kind of a timestamp dateline now. This is May 1st. This is 3 days prior. Around noon on the day after Nixon's speech, some 500 Kent State students and faculty gather on the Commons, a large grassy area in the middle of the campus. I read that, Laurel, and I think, it's their campus. If 500 students want to get together, you know, to play, you know, Mother May I, who cares? I mean, that's not anything that's illegal or anything to be
on the
concerned about.
Commons. It's the Commons.
That's what it's for. Yeah, exactly. Now, what they did was they buried a copy of the Constitution.
I'm surprised they didn't say a large grassy knoll.
Yeah. That's which it was. Yeah, they bury a copy of the Constitution to symbolize Nixon's murder of constitutional principles by invading Cambodia without a declaration of war or consultation with Congress, as I mentioned. Now, a second rally that afternoon also ends peacefully.
They had to call it an incursion. They have to give different names to war because they don't want to get the war. They don't want to go through the process of getting the war approved. So they just give it a different name.
Yes. Well said. That Friday night, a crowd of drunken protesters form in downtown and begin taunting local police and breaking some store windows. Okay. And again, I like the History Channel, but I look at this. This is factual. I don't have any doubt this is what happens. But
the part that they leave out is that there were a lot of strangers in that crowd that were breaking those windows. People that were not from campus. People had no one ever. The people who were protesting or who involved in whatever was going on at these events, they knew each other because it was a small group of people. It was a small part of the campus that was anti-war. And so all of a sudden they're doing what they're doing and they see all these people converging on them, working with them, but they don't recognize any of them. And if you look a little closer, you see they're wearing wigs and hippie clothes for no, this is not their usual garb. They're called plants. And that's at Kent State. One of the most important facts about Kent State is there were plants and people that were instigating everywhere.
Well, here's the thing, Laurel. People would hear that and think, "Oh, that sounds crazy." But those people were there. Those people that did those type of subversive activities, those types of covert activities, and the agencies that they represented, they were there. That's been proven, correct?
It's been proven. And just so people understand, they're still there. They're going to be at any event that you go to against war. They have infiltrated all the organizations. And basically, the national security state has infected all things, and Kent
Yes.
State was a major infection. It was very, very bad, and there were those people are being paid. They're not just doing it out of the goodness of their heart. And
Yes.
most of them at Kent State after the massacre, they got really great jobs for the rest of their life.
It's funny how that works. That's going to be the name of my autobiography. I tell people, funny how that works. Let me continue with this. There was something else I wanted to say about this. Now, we're that sentence. Oh my God, they were breaking store windows. Okay, now, folks, this is a story about four students, innocent students, being gunned down, murdered on campus. Now, some store windows being broken, pale in comparison to that. The other thing I want to bring out is the fact that they were drunken protest. They were college students. My God. Laurel, do you know how drunk I got when I was in college? I mean, I literally, as they say, couldn't hit my ass with both hands about half of the time. I mean, that kind of goes hand in hand with being a
Well,
college student back then. And I think it may then. It certainly doesn't deserve anyone being gunned down, for God's sake. And I don't think
well,
it's intended to justify that. But again, stating it this way kind of makes you think, oh my God, maybe in some way they deserved what happened. They did
it's
not.
been cleaned up. I mean, this
Yeah.
History Channel is the COINTELPRO version of what happened at Kent State. But at that Friday night, students were watching basketball tournaments in
Ah,
the bars because they couldn't watch it on their dorm. There was only one TV in a dorm. That's how it was back then. It was down in the main lobby, and excuse me, people wanted to have it over a beer, and so they're having they're having their drink, and they get 3-2 beer because you can't drink in Ohio until 21. So here are the 18-year-olds and up, between 18 and 21. They can only get 3-2 beer, which is like watered down beer.
yeah.
And at 10 or 11 o'clock that night, they closed the bar. The bar usually closes like at 2, but they closed the bar and they forced the students out into the street because they wanted to create an event, and it worked. And they forced the students out, and the students were pissed off because, can you imagine, you're a student, you don't have a lot of money, you want to watch the basketball championship, you order your beer, and you have to leave it immediately because the police are getting you out of there. So you can't take your beer with you. You have to do what they say. And so
Yeah.
they were disgruntled, and they were waiting, and they're wondering, why are we being forced out? And at that time, the Hells Angels roll in, and they start burning some stuff. And it was a fabricated event.
Well, and again, with the college events, there's a thing here in Iowa that they kind of got rid of it. At Iowa State University every year called VSHO. It's kind of a celebration of spring. I mean, there's some official means or reason to have the thing. It basically was just a drunken free for all, which college students are likely to have again. I mean, it happened every year here in Iowa. Nobody got shot down over it on campus. So let's continue here. I want to continue through this thing. So, okay, so the town's entire police force mobilizes, as Laura says, forcing the demonstrators back to the campus after Kent Mayor Leroy Satrom. Is that guy's name, Laurel? How do you pronounce that? Satrom? Satrom. Okay, he declared a state of emergency. Things finally quiet down at 2:30 a.m. Now, worried about more interest, Satrom asked the governor, James Rode, to mobilize the Ohio National Guard. My God, again, folks, this Visha thing that I talked about, think if they did that. When guardsmen began arriving on the Kent State campus that evening, they find the school's Army Reserve Officer Training Corps building had been set on fire. Okay, so now I want you to comment on this also, Laurel, but here's the point that I would make. And I used to be a police and fire reporter back in the day. That's what I did when I was, running around with my newsman cap on. if you want to get an excited, over the top response from police, I found this to be true virtually every time. There's a couple of things that you could do. Run from them. Number one, when they're trying to apprehend you, that really pisses those guys off. I mean, and if they ever catch you, by God, out come the billy clubs, or maybe worse. We find that true in American policing even today. It enrages them. They do not let you just run away. If they catch you, look out. The other thing is, if they feel that they're under attack, if they feel that their own, that blue line is in danger or being attacked in some way, oh my God, the response is craziness. Well, this was the Army Reserve Officer Training Corps, the ROTC, the ROTC, there on campus. That building supposedly, reportedly, had been set on fire. I got to wonder whether or not that had something to do with the response that we saw.
It was hard to get the fire started. It had been raining on campus for a few weeks before. The building itself had been marked for demolition because it was an old hovel wooden building that was scheduled to be destroyed. But the students chose it as a symbol to make sure that they could say that they were protesting against war. And across campuses across America, ROTCs were being attacked and burnt, and this was common. But the Kent State one was a little bit more specific because they tried getting it started and it wouldn't start. Mm-hmm. And they tried to do Molotov cocktail and they actually got one of the curtains burning inside the ROTC building, and they thought that was a victory. So from what I understood, I wasn't there, from what I understand, the students saw that as a victory. They finally got something burning in there, and they went and marched across campus to get other students to join in and on this victory march. And by the time they returned it's a very large campus. By the time they returned with their group of people that they had gathered, the ROTC fire was totally engulfed. It had gone out, and it was totally engulfed now. And basically, it was reignited by the FBI. They had to make sure that it was burning because they needed the symbol. Once again, lots of strangers there, lots of people that no one recognized, lots of people wearing long hair wigs,
God, long-haired wigs. Now, here's something that, as you were talking, that reminded me. You weren't there, but we got to digress just a little bit. You were there just a few days or a week prior to this, as I recall. You visited your sister there, right?
I had visited my sister for her birthday. It was April 23rd, and my birthday was a month before. So I took a train from my parents' house in Pittsburgh to Kent, and we celebrated together on the weekend of the 25th and 26th of April. And we went to see the movie Woodstock. So I got to see that with her, which was just so wonderful. And I was there with Barry, her boyfriend, and the three of us. And we had heard that people that were waiting online to go see Woodstock had been attacked. People were coming and spitting on them.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a place where the sides were, it was jacked up, and it was jacked up on purpose. And we went out to dinner. My parents came and picked me up that weekend. The two of us, we hung out, my sister and I, we had a great time. We kind of were healing some of the wounds of older sister, younger sister stuff. And we were outside the complete control of my parents, which really helped. And basically, my parents came and took us out to dinner with Barry, and we had a great meal. And Allison had announced that she was transferring to SUNY at Buffalo because she didn't want to hang out at a backwater Kent State any longer. She wanted to be more in the center of things. And she had been accepted, and she was transferring with Barry. And my parents were delighted that she was staying in school instead of dropping out.
Yeah.
And we had a great meal, and we said goodbye. And that's the last time we ever saw her alive.
Oh my God. Yeah. Goodbye. Indeed. Well, let me continue on through this. A crowd of about 1,000 people surrounded the building that had been set ablaze. Laurel was talking about, many of them cheering and confronting firefighters to prevent them from extinguishing the blaze. Again, all the, oh my God, a building was on fire. Okay, we're talking about a building. I would imagine that building's
It's
still
an
there or
old
it's been
decrepit
rebuilt or
building.
whatever. Yeah, yeah.
It wasn't even, they said it was worth, hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was worth tens of thousands at the
Yeah.
most.
God, and consider that compared to a human life. Using tear gas and bayonets, the National Guardsmen clear the campus by midnight, ordering students into their dorms. Okay, consider the circumstance, the situation that Laurel was talking about, and
Wait,
thinking about how this would chap your ass if you were a student there on campus. Man, and I'm kind of a hothead now, and I certainly was at that age. I would not like that one bit, particularly given the war and the climate of the day and that type of thing. This was combustible, Laurel.
the National Guard had been waiting on, and they were bivouacking at local schools. They had actually been involved in a Teamster strike that had been going on for like a few weeks, and it was a big deal. One of the Teamsters actually took a shot at one of the guardsmen, but they didn't return fire. And so when the guardsmen were working on the Teamster strike, they were actually federalized. And that means that they're at the command of the commander in chief, who was Nixon at that time. And for some reason, they had federalized them. And it ended early. The Teamster strike ended early. And so what they decided to do was to keep them bivouacking at local schools around the Kent State area because they needed them to be in federal role for the massacre.
Jeez. All right, let's get back to this thing here. Let me continue. So, see, this is the kind of insight that you get on this show, and you get from people like Laurel. And there's no doubt she knows what she's talking about. You got to kind of read between the lines. You got to investigate. You got to understand. So, by Sunday, more than 1,000 National Guardsmen had arrived on campus. Governor Rhodes flies to Kent that morning and holds a press conference, calling the demonstrators the worst type of people that we harbor in America.
He called
College students on Kent State University campus. Yeah.
He called them brown shirts.
Jesus.
I mean, he called them Nazis, Nazi communists,
Yeah. And fast forward to today. Okay, so with Rhodes' support, Kent State administrators announced they are banning a protest rally planned for the next day. Further confrontations between students and guardsmen break out that night after demonstrators assemble on the Commons near the Victory Bell, which is normally used to celebrate football victories.
This banning thing that they're talking about, that's fabrication. That's not true. There was none of that happened. Instead, what happened on May 3rd is it was a beautiful day on campus. My sister was hanging out with her friends. It had been a rainy spring, as I mentioned, so the students had felt like they were cooped up in their dorms and studying for finals and whatever. So this was a free moment for them to go out and fraternize. They went to fraternize with the guardsmen, asking them what the heck they were doing. There was one guardsman there that was of particular interest to my sister and Barry. They walked by him. He had a flower in his rifle. And the guardsman's his superior went up to him and said, "What are you doing? That's flower in your rifle." And my sister pushed to the front of the crowd with Barry, and witnessed this superior berating the man for having a flower. He says, "You're going to do target practice with that flower in your rifle this week?" And the guy said, "No, sir." And he says, "Well, remove the flower." And so as the guy goes to remove the flower, he hands it to his boss. My sister grabs it and says, "What's the matter with peace? Flowers are better than bullets."
Yeah.
And that's on her grave.
And I've used that as a title on the show, the episode that we did last year. I mean, what a slogan! And just one of the remembrances of Allison and one of the legacies. And we're going to have
it's basically she said that less than 24 hours before her slaughter.
My God.
And they meant to do it, and they I believe they targeted her because she's very beautiful. She stood out in a crowd. She's tall and she was vocal. They knew who she was.
Let's continue here with this.
But by the way, it is false that they said that they were going to be canceling that thing. There was none of that on May 3rd. There was none of this canceling. That happened only on May 4th. This is fabrication. This is telling us a false story so that it makes it kinder, gentler, makes a lot of sense. It makes at least more sense, right?
And it adds some justification on the side of shooting down and slaughtering the students. My God, they were told on May 3rd that it was canceled. I mean, not true.
That is not true. There's nothing true in this.
See, this is what happens, folks. Defying the ban, people began gathering on the Commons around 11 a.m. This is May 4th, the day, folks. By noon, about 3,000 people are there, including a core group of about 500 demonstrators around the Victory Bell and many more onlookers. Again, if they're just laying the land, I get it. Otherwise, I don't understand the significance of this. But the target of the
it's lunchtime.
Yeah, the Victory Bell. Oh my God, these students, these wild apes are out there protesting around the Victory Bell.
Beyond that, they're changing classes. They're getting lunch. They're going. This is the Commons. It's the center of the campus. How do you know which are which is the question, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't 3,000, by the way. That's an inflated number as well.
Okay. See, you get it here, folks. The target of their protest shifts from Nixon, Cambodia, and the Vietnam War to the National Guard and its occupation of Kent State. And again, to me, that's completely justified and reasonable. After the demonstrators refused to disperse, some 100 of the National Guardsmen began to march across the Commons. Okay, now if I'm a student here, now you got to think about this. If you're a student, you can live on campus for as long as 4 years or longer. If you're not the brightest bulb in the box like me, you might be there 5 or 6 years. It's your home, folks. I mean, this is where you live. How would you respond or how would you react if some yobo with a helmet on was telling you to leave your home, basically telling you where to go and what to do? This is my campus. I pay a lot of money to be here, Joe. I'm not going anywhere. Yeah. And flash forward again. Let's look at Ukraine. Let's look at Afghanistan. Let's look at Iraq. That was all the circumstance that we're talking about. You show up with a rifle and tell me to leave my home. I'm not likely to do it, especially if I think that you're a countryman or woman and that you're not going to shoot me, for God's sake, even though that you have a rifle. But stay tuned here. We're going to continue on. They pushed the crowd up a slope known as Blanket Hill and down the other side into a parking lot.
They were at the highest point of the land on campus. It's a military tactic.
Sure. You want to control the high ground. Following the crowd into a nearby practice football field, the guardsmen find themselves blocked in by a fence. They throw tear gas canisters and
they told the students they were surrounded when they found themselves blocked in by a fence. So all the students were like laughing hysterically. Are you really you got us surrounded when you're trapped by a fence?
Yeah, you got us right where you want us. Yeah, that's laughable. Yeah. Okay, so they throw the tear gas canisters, point their guns at the demonstrators. They yell and throw rocks and other debris at them. Now, after about 10 minutes of this, the guardsmen begin to move back up.
Debris. There was small rocks. There was no bricks. There was none of this. There was lots of motherfucking yelling. Yes, absolutely. Pigs off campus. Yes, absolutely.
Now, this last sentence I wanted to ask you about. The crowd cheers their retreat and continues throwing things at them. Okay, their retreat. Okay, so they're moving. They're moving away. They continue throwing things at them. I'm thinking a major league pitcher probably couldn't hit them with something because there was quite a distance, wasn't there? Eventually,
my sister ended up getting shot, and she was 343 feet from these guys. Basically, they were over to one side. They walk by the parking lot. They start going up the hill away from the protesters. They go all the way up. They're going up the hill to the highest point of the land at the pagoda. That you see that in all the pictures. And they get up there, and there was a scuttle that was going on. There were students saying, "He's a pig, kill him." What had happened is a guy named Terry Norman. I was not there. This is what I've been able to put together. He brought out his pistol. It was shiny, one of those nickel-plated pistols. And the sun, it was shiny. It was a beautiful day, big billowy clouds, gorgeous day. And the sun ricocheted off the pistol. He pulled it out, and the students attacked him and started punching him. And the reason why I know this is because there was a recording. Someone on their dormitory ledge was recording the whole event. And this preceded the massacre. And they hear him getting you can hear the fists landing against Terry Norman. And Terry Norman manages to get away from the crowd, even though they're attacking him. And I've seen pictures of it, so I know it really did happen. And he manages to get away, and he runs and he shoots off his pistol, 4 times. Now, the guardsmen at this point are marching up the hill, and they're almost marching beyond the peak, because he had been waylaid when the students attacked him. But he managed to get it off. He shoots his pistol. The guard then says, someone in the guard who's not wearing a gas mask, there's only a couple of them that aren't wearing gas masks, gives the command to fire. And he says, all right, guard, to begin the fire, the command. And the command is not by any military standard whatsoever. All right, guard, command, ready, set, and then the fire, and so they turn all in unison, because they were going up this hill away from the students. They all turn in unison. They all shoot in unison. So obviously that proves that there was a command. You can't all turn in unison and shoot in unison.
That's critical.
That.
Yeah.
Didn't have the same thought in their head, as my mother says. So basically, that's what happened with the Kent State. The first shot was Terry Norman, FBI informant, provocateur, and then the guardsmen then shoot. They shot to kill. It was with M1s, with bullets that explode upon impact. Very illegal. My sister had a portion of that in every organ of her body, and
people don't realize that.
They marched away.
These assault rifles today, and I talk about this on my podcast all the time. You talk about being struck by bullets. It's like being struck by a pop can. I mean, that's what these rifles are intended to do. They're not intended to wound or bring down assailants. That's not what they're intended to do. They're intended to blow you apart, and that's what they do. In fact, I want to bring this.
M1 shoot for 2 miles, and so there were shot elements everywhere.
Let me bring this up, because this has got the photos, and I love to see the photos. They're such beautiful young people, my God, and the only way that they live on.
Those are photos that they never liked. They didn't want their high school pictures with their ties and everything.
That's true.
They had all become hippies. They were all, even Bill Schroeder, the first picture there, he was in ROTC. So he received friendly fire that killed him.
I mean, from his own,
about that, and he was like watching, and he knew he was going to get thrown out of ROTC if he said that he was anti-war. So he kept his mouth shut, but he was there. Sandy, she's on the right,
the far right,
far right. She was a education student. She was working with special needs. She was well loved. She did an art painting with Jeff Miller. The two of them did an anti-war painting just a week before. Everyone that is here was anti-war and stood for it and died for it.
Oh, well said. I'll read the last little bit of this now. That at 12:24 p.m., just after reaching the top of the hill, the guardsmen turn back and fire, as Laurel says, in unison, their M1 rifles and pistols, some of them aiming directly into the crowd. Well, obviously, it mowed down some of them in 13 seconds of shooting. 13 seconds of shooting. I got news for you, folks. With these types of rifles, that's a lot of fire. They got between 61 and 67 shots away. And as Laurel says, Jeffrey Miller, Allison Krause, William Schroeder, and Sandra Schur are killed, and 9 other students are injured, including Dean Collar, who shot in the back and left permanently paralyzed from the waist down. Now, I do recall that. I remember hearing. Is he still alive, Laurel?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he is. He's kind of celebrated back at Kent State. They allow him to have a word in edgewise. The problem with Kent State has always been that we're not allowed to talk about it. It's only one voice allowed, and it's Kent State University. And the CIA has come in there to maintain the story as well. That's a whole other story. They came in for the 50th full on. But Dean Kaler, he got hurt the worst, immobilized for life. And basically, we settled our lawsuit in 1979 because he needed medical attention and payment for the injuries that he sustained on May 4. And, when the government shoots at you and wounds you, there's no insurance.
Yeah.
There's no one, when you get, you get hurt in an arrest situation, that's on you. You were causing trouble, so insurance doesn't pay for that. So he had these things, and we needed to make sure that he was okay. So we were forced to settle so that he could be taken care of. And then that's how the empire works. Let's get real.
Yeah. Let me bring this up on screen because we had that photo that, as Laurel says, that Allison would not have liked. She'd like this one. This is some artwork here. Tell us about this piece of art.
This is by Crappett Campbell. It's he did it because I wanted it. We were honoring Allison. That's her birthday and her death day. And she said flowers are better than bullets. And I think that's one of the best pictures that she has. I have the scarf that she's wearing around her belt there as a belt. I have that scarf and I carry it with me.
Look at that, folks. I mean, that takes me back. I mean, look at that. I mean, that's beauty. What a beautiful young woman. My God. And I mean, that's really nice. I really like that. Allison Krause. Okay. So, that kind of gets us to the very tragic day. And so then begins the aftermath. And, I know your folks were on the firing line for this for a long time, and then you got involved, and you've started the Mendo Coast Current website, and I don't know, just take it. And this is a speech, actually the transcript of a speech that you gave for the 45th anniversary of the Kent State Massacre. Just talk us through the present day, if you would, Laurel.
Well, the present day, I was 15 when Allison was killed. I watched my parents pursue the lawsuits. They took that. I went to college and moved out to the West Coast and worked in Silicon Valley and did a whole bunch of stuff related to computers. And Kent State meandered along. In 1979, there was the settlement, and we got $15,000 in a statement of regret for the shooting.
Jeez.
Killing of Allison. It was basically a slap in the face to my family because we had fought the lawsuits since 1970. Here was 79. My father led it all, Arthur Krause. And they wanted to make sure that we could feel the pain. I mean, Dean Kaler got his large settlement, and people that were wounded, they needed to have this, but they made sure that they delivered their message that Allison's life was only worth $15,000.
My God.
And they've stayed with us. It has not changed since that day. It's always been, it was an unfortunate incident, and the guard were in fear for their lives. That was the first time ever used institutionally that an institution, a college or a National Guard or law enforcement, that they would always actually say that they were in fear for their lives. And here these men are wearing gas masks, they're wearing war regalia, they got M1s with bayonets on it, and they are afraid of unarmed students over a football field away. Now, how is that possible? It's only possible in propaganda. It's only possible when you're making up a false narrative. And that's what we have about Kent State today. That's it. So I ended up getting very upset. What happened is we formed the Kent State Truth Tribunal in 2010. And I did that with Emily Kunstler. She's the daughter of the very celebrated radical attorney, William Kunstler. And she's a filmmaker. And what we did over the 40th, we filmed original participants and witnesses of the Kent State Massacre to hear their stories. We used evocative questions, and we wanted them to be neutral questions and try to get to the truth of what happened from the people who were there, even though it was 40 years later. And we held 3 tribunals, one in Kent, one in San Francisco, so the West Coast people could go to, and East Coast. It was free. And it was a healing event. People for the first time were honored for their stories instead of maligned. It was an open forum where we could share and heal together. It was very beautiful, and it's lasting. And hopefully someday I'm going to be able to put up all the interviews that we'll have this all organized in the right way. We were Michael Moore's first live cast. We live casted on our all of our tribunals on his.
I remember, yeah.
And so we did that, and days after we held our first tribunal, the order to fire news came up from Stuart Allen. A forensic expert he analyzed the Kent State tape.
The audio.
It was audio of the Kent State tape that I told you about, the guy that had it on his window ledge, and Terry Struby. And so he had this tape, and the tape had been copied to a CD by my father for his lawsuits. So it was forever captured, because 50 years later, the tape is dust. You can't pick up anything. But as soon as it was possible, the technology was there. He had it transferred to digital, and it's captured. And it was sitting in his Yale lawsuit archive. And what happened is the Plain Dealer looked at it. That's the Cleveland Plain Dealer, the daily newspaper in Cleveland, Ohio. They commissioned Stuart Allen to analyze the Kent State tape. And what he found was he heard those fists being thrown at Terry Norman before that's where I learned about all this. I never had any proof before the tape. And boy, the United States government and Kent State University and all the people that are, maintaining this one voice narrative, basically, they did not like the commands to fire to come out. They especially didn't like it because when you have commands to fire, you have command responsibility. And they've never accepted any responsibility, accountability, or acknowledgement for anything. It was an unfortunate incident, and the students were in fear and the guard were in fear for their lives. They're in fear for their lives while they're carrying M1s. Yeah, right. Yeah. So basically, we decided to take it to the International Criminal Court for the human rights of this. And I sent an email, and I was rejected within 6 months. It didn't fit their purview. We're not signatories on the International Criminal Court. And
right. The United States isn't. Yeah.
Right. And the statute doesn't, the Rome statute that guides the International Criminal Court, it says from 2000 on. Now, the new evidence showed up in 2010, but the event was 1970. So they just said, no, we don't want to they didn't want to deal with it. And I don't blame them. But then I decided, I had another thought, and I said, well, why don't I take it to the United Nations? What happened is I was reading an article about a lawyer that had just gotten a whole bunch of justice against the CIA. He won a case against the CIA, and it was in the New York Times. And I read this article, and it was about Jamil Dakwar, who was director of the ACLU Human Rights group, and he's the director. And so I let my fingers do the walking, and I called him up on the phone, and I reached him immediately, and I said, I'd really like to pursue working with you about Kent State, because in the quote that you had in this article that he had just won, he was the lawyer that won the case, you had said a quote that would apply equally to Kent State. And so I said, but I've been working really hard at Kent State Truth Tribunal. He says, oh, I've heard of your tribunal, which I got to tell you, that was like real acknowledgement for me. I never had anyone say that they had heard about my work. And we decided to work together. And within a year and a half, I took Kent State before the UN Human Rights Committee for the US Fourth Periodic Review. And we stay at the UN. We don't care about what's going on in the US with their legal system or Congress or whatever. They're never going to pay us mind. They're going to only try to shut us up. And so I took it to the UN. And of course, they had to do evil deeds and take down my stuff and prank me about all the stuff at the UN, because that's what they do. This is how they play the game. But we still spoke. And we're still a going concern at the UN. And I'm going back for the US Fifth Periodic Review when the US sets its appointment to get its review.
Well, good on you. And as I started off by saying, this is a Rosetta Stone. This is the lens that this Kent State massacre is one of the lenses, but it's a focal point for me. It's how I look at the world and how I look at the government. To quote the great Bob Dylan, don't trust your leaders and watch your parking meters. People wonder what that line means. Well, that's what he's talking about. I mean, don't trust your leaders, and don't be careful when you demonstrate and protest. And I know Laurel's talked about this, because this can, and it has happened. They can shoot you down. I mean,
and they've gotten away with it. So the precedent has been set.
Yes, it exists. It's in the history books. And here in this country, Laurel, I mean, I look at, I talk about it all the time. Ukraine, for instance, when the $300 million a day incursion into Afghanistan officially ended, I said on my podcast, I said, look out, Ukraine. I mean, they're not going to give this money back. They're going to move into that area. Something's going to happen with this money. Guess what happened? I mean, just almost on cue. I mean, we've got to look at Joe Biden as an example, one of the primary architects on the Democratic side of the aisle, not the Republicans, but the Democrats behind the Iraq war. What did we do as Americans? We turned around fully knowing that that was a false flag, that war was under a false pretense. The weapons of mass destruction, they did not exist. We know that. We elected Joe Biden president, and here we are on the precipice of world war in Ukraine. So,
well, we're also afraid of Trump. We have to do that.
Yes,
I mean, fear scared us into this. And Biden, I worked on Capitol Hill for Senator Kennedy one summer. My father got me the job because my father was working with Kennedy on his lawsuits and all. And it was
Ted Kennedy. Yeah,
Ted Kennedy. It was the summer of 1974, and it was the summer that Nixon quit. I was there in Washington, D.C. And every Friday, as a student, as a Senate intern, we would have a big gathering in an auditorium where we would have some legislator come and speak for us. And we were supposed to have Gerald Ford come and speak to us at that time. He was vice president. And he was supposed to come and speak before our group, and he had to cancel because he was going to be sworn in as president that day, because Nixon was flying off in his helicopter that day. So who did they get to put it in there to speak?
Funny how that works. Yeah.
Biden. Biden spoke to our group, and I thought, this guy is magnificent. I loved his words. I loved his speech. And then I learned later that he's a plagiarist.
Yes.
Guy has never done his own speech stuff. He stole that speech that I heard. That was so. I called my mother to tell her how fantastic that speech was. He's one we got to watch. What did he ever do?
Yeah, that's not allegedly. That's a proven fact. Yeah, he was a proven plagiarist. Again, in a couple of failed presidential runs, he was proven to have plagiarized. He quit over that. And then we elected him. Well, I could go on forever about that. There's a silver lining to the darkest of clouds. And going back to this Rosetta Stone, another one for me was the O.J. Simpson trial. I mean, my God, that guy, what a very black cloud that was. But the silver lining was you should have had your eyes opened about the American judicial system and how it works and what can happen and why you should be mistrustful of these authority figures.
It doesn't work.
I mean, this is a beautiful piece of art.
I
This is
asked, I asked
forever.
an artist to make this for me because I didn't have any current pictures of my sister with me, and so he made this for me. And she came to visit him while he was doing the art. My sister is very active, and I'm not all woo woo, but I do believe this. And she was waking him up every night and telling him words, and he wrote all the words in the white of this flag that she said. And
Oh,
I believe it's true. I mean, it's Allison doesn't rest easy on the other side. She's very active in creating peace in our world. And I work with her and I walk with her and I serve her every single day.
yes, you do. My God, and good on you for doing that. I mean, it's a tribute to a great young lady, and also,
But what's
the
really great about it is the part that people don't understand, you heal when you do this work. You heal your own work. And I had a very big wound when my sister died. I mean,
mhm,
it just ruined me. And
yes,
but then I realized she's still with me. And she's active with me every day. And I get to heal. I get to heal these horrible wounds that I've carried around for 52 years by doing this work. I feel better every day. And that's for all of us. It's not just for me. You can heal your life. You can heal your worst wound by facing it, finding out the truth about it. And then you actually join the collective of us that are healing our world. Because this is what it's going to take. We can't fight them. It's not going to work, the fighting them. It's going to be that we adopt a different attitude, that we say we want peace and we will settle for nothing less, that we will stand for peace and and that we want to heal these wounds. They don't want us healing our wounds. They want us to be unencumbered. They want us to be encumbered. They want us to always be crippled by what they did to us. It's up to us to heal our wounds. You are the only one that can heal your wound. And I hope you do. I hope you find peace in your life. That's what Allison wanted. That's what I want.
yeah, that's great. I mean, that's a great close. I want to give you the last word here, Laurel, maybe to talk about the websites or the web addresses or how people can get in touch with you or support this great cause that you're involved in. And, again, I would just call it the Rosetta Stone. And the silver lining here is let's be alert. Let's be awake. Let's remember Bob Dylan. I mean, don't trust your leaders. Watch your parking meters, folks. Be safe. Be careful out there. And I know that's top of mind with you, Laurel, that young people need to be active, but they need to be careful also because of what happened to Allison Krause in 1970. Give us a wrap up here. Give us a close as we end this
Well, one of
podcast
my
by
most
George.
important works is the protection of protesters, and that's really important today. You have to understand that they're coming. They do not want us protesting. They do not want us to be anti-war. It's really that's the hottest button. Our whole economy is based on war at this point, so they really don't want us to trash the economy.
Yes.
And so, what you can do is to make sure that get out and protest where you can, be protected wherever you can, and fight all these laws that they're putting in place where they can run us over if they want, and all these things that are going by the states against protests. People
Yes.
really have to reclaim our right to protest in America because it's been stolen, and it got stolen the worst at Kent State. You can reach us at truthtribunal.org. It's the Kent State Truth Tribunal. There's also Mendo Coast Current, which is my blog. I'm active on Facebook. I'm hoping to get out of Facebook hell soon. I look forward to Panquake.
Aren't we all?
I don't know if you've heard about Panquake, but I think it's really the answer for our future. It's without ads, social media, short messaging. They're getting close. It's not going to allow the security state to be involved. The servers are in Iceland. It's incorporated in the Cook Islands so that the FBI and FOIA letters can't take down, and there's no algorithms. It's just people meeting and talking online, a whole new level, a new wave of social media for the people. This is the beginning of the second wave of the peace movement. This is what we're in right now. It's the birthing of it. It's Allison and her friends. That was the dawning of the age of Aquarius.
Mhm.
Now it's the age of Aquarius. We're walking into it, and it's not going to be full force until 2026. But now we have the opportunity to build a movement the way that we want it built, where it represents all of us. And I hope that people will take this as a signal, the 52nd, that we're just not going to listen to what they're saying anymore. We're going to turn off the corporate media, and we're going to live
Yes.
our life and have some peace in our life before we die.
Ah, God. Now that's the closer we were looking for. That's a wrap up for my part of this. What I want to do every May 4th, each and every May 4th, as long as I do podcasts by George. Laurel, I want to have you back on the show to remind people every single year and to update your efforts to bring justice and truth to the Kent State Massacre. Never be forgotten. It's the American Rosetta Stone. Laurel Krause, thanks again for coming on this podcast by George Live Line, May 4th, special edition.
Let there be peace. Thank
Ah,
you for having me on. I'll be on anytime you ask me, George.
ah,
I think you give a great interview. I'm really pleased. Thank you so much.
that's great. You got to love Laurel Krause and then never forget Allison, of course. And folks, as Laurel was saying there, I hope you like Podcast by George, and I hope you subscribe to us on Facebook. You can follow us there, and you'll get notified. You'll see the video episodes when they're aired, particularly the live lines like we're watching today, also on YouTube. And then if you go to podcastbygeorge.com, you can choose any platform, including audio, if you just want to get these in audio format so that you can listen when you're riding a bike, working out, driving a car, whatever the case might be. Go to iTunes, go to Spotify, go to the iHeartRadio app, go to Amazon Audio or whatever they have there, any place where audio podcasts are seen or heard. But that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. You know what I'm going to do here? Before we end, I'm going to play. I'm going to end with the song here, just to take us out here. I'll play this, and again, this is a great Bob Pace, and it's a very somber, but it's very appropriate for the day. So let's play this, and we'll see you again here on the next podcast by George. That's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up right after the song. That's all there is, and there ain't no more. That's another podcast by George.